Today from the global lane, pushing back against a globalist agenda, Europe turns right.
It's pure desperation. People want change, and they want to feel it, they want to see it in their wallet.
Assassinating a presidency, not with bullets but government bureaucrats.
I think just about any agency across the board, you'll find that there are a significant number of these bureaucrats who want to continue the Biden policies, Democratic policy. They will try to destroy anybody who gets in their way.
Losing their religion. A majority of Gen Z women are leaving church.
I think the root of this problem runs very, very deep, and in order to understand it, we need to look at the radical lies and propaganda that the modern feminist movement directs.
Embracing the science. Healthcare professionals admit gender reassignment harms children's bodies. And it's all right here on the global lane. A major political shakeup in Europe this week as conservative parties made significant gains, especially in France and Germany. Dale Hurd explains the reasons for this astonishing European shift to the right.
Right-wing parties are already in power or supporting governments in 7 out of the EU's 27 nations. And they've become major political players in several other nations. Anti-immigrant firebrand Geert Wilders is about to take over the Dutch government. A big reason behind the surge of the right in Europe is that Europeans have become much poorer. One study found that the average EU country is now poorer per capita than every U.S. state except Idaho and Mississippi. Critics blame overregulation, high taxes, falling wages, and higher energy costs. Much of that due to the EU's Green Deal to stop climate change. While Brussels worries about the end of the world, many Europeans are just trying to make it to the end of the month with their paychecks. Holger Thus is a German energy and climate expert.
Basically, it's pure desperation. People want change, and they want to feel it, they want to see it in their wallet.
The European right gets called far right, radical right, Nazi, and fascist. In most cases, though, their policy positions would look like America's Republican Party. They want to stop policies that are making Europeans poorer and strengthen borders to stop what they see as a migrant invasion. Many European countries have an acute housing shortage at a time when migrants are being given a place to live. This Dutchman says there are houses for the foreigners and Dutch people can hardly get a house. Chris Alberts is a Dutch journalist.
Years ago, it was already difficult to find a house in Amsterdam that was affordable. But now, if you would go to distant cities that probably no one in America has ever heard of, even there, it's impossible to find a house that is affordable.
Frank Ferretti, the executive director of the think tank MCC Brussels, is considered to be a major intellectual force in the European right. He's hopeful this election will blunt harmful policies from Brussels.
On balance, I think the prognosis is positive, but it's not going to be such a radical transformation as many people hope. You have to remember that the European Union is a very anti-democratic institution. It's a massive bureaucracy. So my fear is that this massive bureaucracy is still going to be there the day after the election.
Dale Hurd joins us with insights on the European election results. First, Dale, let's begin with France. Marine Le Pen's Conservative National Party, a rally party, made significant gains, so much so that French President Macron called for a snap election starting June 30th before the Summer Olympics. So why did he do that so quickly after Le Pen's European victory? It seems a bit risky.
I think it's all he had. We call it going for broke or Hail Mary. He really didn't have a choice, but I think he's probably already cleaning out his office. He's done. And we're going to see a right-wing so-called leader. These people really are more like American Republicans, but a conservative leader of France in some sort of coalition. It's been fun to watch some of the more centrist but center-right parties in France already offering to do a coalition with national rally, which used to be, they were the Nazis and you should be ashamed for supporting them. In fact, Macron again said you should be ashamed for offering to do a coalition government with them. It's shame, shame, shame. But the French people have had enough, and France is going to have a right-wing government.
Well, what about Germany? Conservatives made gains there, but the most notable jump came with the far-right AfD party. So what might that mean for German immigration policy?
And again, we call it far right, but I've looked at their platform. In some ways, they're not as far right as U.S. Republicans. But yeah, it's the big impact in Germany is it made the chancellor look so bad because he didn't even finish second. Actually, the first place was a center party, and then AfD, and then Scholz's party. But the Germans are suffering, and as I mentioned in my piece, one concern is poverty in one of the wealthiest regions in the world. They're being ground to powder economically by this Green Deal and net zero, and they're sick of it. And so the Green Party in Germany did terrible. And so, that's going to be the first thing to take a hit in Brussels are these wacky green policies. You've seen how they've persecuted farmers over it. That's going to be blunted. And then, of course, open borders.
So, Dale, what will this conservative shift mean for European foreign policy? I'm thinking mainly about Russia and the war in Ukraine.
It's certainly going to tilt everything more in Russia's favor. And to me, because I am not a fan of Putin or of Russia, and I think Americans who think Russia is somehow a good guy are sadly mistaken. But you have this current running through Europe as well. And it's similar to here. People don't want anything to do with whatever Biden supports, and if he supports Ukraine, then it must be bad. It's similar in Europe. Brussels supporting Ukraine has made conservatives in different countries allergic to that whole war and to supporting Ukraine. So I think we will see a change there.
Well, and if this were the U.S., we'd call it a red wave. So how likely is this to set a precedent, a red tsunami maybe, spreading across the Atlantic to the U.S. election in the fall?
That's an interesting point because Europe's left-wing parties and the Democrats have the same problem. They've lost the working class because they've become parties of the college-educated and of environmentalists and people pushing a radical sexual agenda that working families with children, they can't relate to. It's this debate, as I have mentioned, between the end of the world because of climate change and trying to make it to the end of the month with your paycheck. And people are choosing the end of the month, and they're seeing they can't get there with these left-wing parties, and so they're turning right.
Okay, Dale Hurd, CBN News senior correspondent. Thank you, Dale, for sharing those insights. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
A new CBS YouGov poll released this week found if RFK Jr. and other third-party candidates are on this fall's election ballot, President Trump will beat Joe Biden by 6 points. So just how successful would Donald Trump be if he is elected to a second term? Our next guest says Trump could easily be blocked by a bloated government bureaucracy and those who manage it. Mark Moyer is author of the book Masters of Corruption: How the Federal Bureaucracy Sabotaged the Trump Presidency. Mark, in your book, you tell the story of how you discovered corruption at the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, and you were accused of disclosing classified information and then fired. So what did you learn from that? What do you want people to know about the power of the bureaucracy?
Yes, well, for one thing, that they will try to destroy anybody who gets in their way, and they will use various weapons. And when we've seen this weaponization, unfortunately, being used against the president, we also saw it recently used against these FBI whistleblowers, one of whom was Marcus Allen, was just exonerated. But we have to be a lot more careful, and Congress in particular needs to act to protect people against this sort of weaponized justice. And we've also seen that it's employed very selectively against conservatives, Trump supporters. We've seen people on the left and Biden people not prosecuted or charged for the very same things, and oftentimes even when there is real evidence against them.
Well, which government agencies and departments then pose the biggest threat to sabotaging an incoming president's policies?
Yes, well, just about any agency, you're going to find that there are a lot of people hostile to the president's agenda. I mean, in terms of most important, certainly Department of Justice is up there. And we saw last time how crooked DOJ lawyers went after Trump through this fraudulent Crossfire Hurricane investigation that was based on the fraudulent Steele dossier. And we've seen, Department of Defense is another one where it's the biggest agency in the federal government. We've seen the same sorts of weaponized justice there, and the administrative state using its power to stall and prevent the administration from what it wants to do. But I think just about any agency across the board, you'll find that there are a significant number of these bureaucrats who want to continue the Biden policies, the Democratic policies, which isn't to say that everybody is this way. And certainly I met a lot of people in government who understand that the job of the bureaucracy is to do what the White House wants. But there is this powerful minority that seeks to resist the will of the president who's been elected by the American people.
Well, I'm sure there are those who would say this is really nothing new. Political appointees and bureaucrats loyal to the opposing party have been causing headaches for presidents for years. So how is what's happening today any different from the past?
Yes, well, certainly this is not a new problem, but I think the magnitude is different. So in 2016, the contributions from federal employees to presidential campaigns, it turned out to be 95% went to Hillary Clinton. And it's an astounding percentage. So we've never seen something like this where there was such widespread hostility to the Trump administration. And so we've seen that, and we lived that the first time. And now we see the Biden administration is working with and trying to solidify and entrench power in the bureaucracy through a variety of measures they're pushing right now in anticipation that they're going to lose the election. So I think we can expect to see similar level of resistance that we saw in the first administration. But I think hopefully Trump administration's learned some lessons and will be able to deal with this better the second time.
Well, what does it mean for the future of our democracy then?
That's a great question. I mean, I think hopefully the Trump administration will put in a better team. I think that was a big part of the problem that I highlight, and one of the reasons that some of the people who should have had my back when I reported corruption just didn't. You didn't have the right kind of people who were there to impose the will of the American people. And so in many cases, and certainly my agency, we had some political appointees who were there basically for personal reasons. They wanted to advance their careers. They wanted to set up some nice contracts for when they left government. And so we saw in too many cases that really the will of the people was subverted to the interests of the swamp. And I think this time we're hopefully, and trying to do what I can to help encourage this, but we need to get people who actually want to make the government work and to do what President Trump has promised to do. And if that's the case, then I think we will see the will of the people preserved. It's going to take a lot of effort, and you need people who are committed to the cause and are not there to pad their nest or make for a comfortable comfortable life in the swamp afterwards. I think you want to bring people from outside of the swamp, and which is how our founders wanted it. They didn't want to have this permanent class of elites who just lived in Washington. You want people who are going to come in, do some work in Washington, and then they'll go back to the country, to the rest of the country where most Americans live.
The book is Masters of Corruption: How the Federal Bureaucracy Sabotaged the Trump Presidency. Mark Moyer, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
Young American adults are leaving church, and surprisingly, women, not men, are leading the way. A survey released by the American Survey Center found that 54% of Gen Z women have disaffiliated from religion. That compares to 46% of Gen Z men. Well, joining us to share her thoughts is campus reform correspondent at the University of Florida, Emily Sturge. Emily, it's good to have you with us. So you believe this finding is a result of false narratives about feminism and Christianity. So explain what you're seeing happening both on social media and college campuses.
I do, and thank you so much for having me. I think this is a very concerning trend, and I think that this alarming rate of Gen Z women in particular leaving religion has to do with these false narratives when it comes to Christianity and when it comes to feminism. The left and the Democratic Party has sold this lie to young women in my generation and they've told us that in order to be free in today's society, we need to reject traditional roles like being a mother or like being a wife and instead focus on our careers and sacrifice our family life. As a Gen Z woman, I've seen how women in my generation have fallen victim to these feminist lies, and I've seen how women around me on my own college campus have completely demonized traditional values and they've rejected religion as a result. I think the root of this problem runs very, very deep, and in order to understand it, we need to look at the radical lies and propaganda that the modern feminist movement directs at women in my generation.
Well, I was astonished to learn that 61% of Gen Z women identify as feminists, and that's the highest ever. 31%, almost 1/3, identify as LGBT. So tell us about your own experience in the classroom. What are professors telling their students about motherhood, sexuality, and marriage?
I had one professor, a male professor, who constantly perpetuated this ideology and claimed that women are not equal to men in today's society and told women like me that we're actually oppressed in today's society. I believe this is a classic example of how the left manipulates young women into believing that we're oppressed, and then they go ahead and tell us that in order to be free or in order to be liberated in today's society, we need to reject traditional values like being a mother or like being a wife. We need to reject religion in order to be free. That's why we're seeing so many young women misled into embracing leftist ideology and abandoning their faith as a result.
Well, as a result of that, Gen Z is now believed to be the loneliest generation. And many of us boomers thought COVID shutdowns caused that. But I know you believe it's also a result of this indoctrination. So what is the effect on families, on the mental health of young adults?
When we look at this trend of young women leaving religion, it's very important to note the mental health implications. Data does show that Gen Z is the loneliest generation and is facing a mental health crisis. Gen Z women in particular report lower mental health than Gen Z men. I think religion provides community, it provides social support, it provides hope for the future. And as more members of Gen Z, specifically women, are rejecting religion, we're left with a generation of young people who are struggling to find purpose and meaning and community, which is contributing greatly to this mental health crisis.
Well, what do you tell fellow students about the importance of faith and traditional values in their lives?
I think in order to be a rebel in today's society, it sounds kind of funny, but it means to put God first, and it means to be a loving mother, and it means to be a loving wife, even while having a career, and I plan to do just that. I am a Gen Z woman who is embracing my religion. I am embracing traditional values, even though the modern feminist movement tells me that I should do the exact opposite. I'm excited to embrace having a family one day. I'm excited to embrace traditional values like being a wife, because that's what I believe brings true happiness. I believe embracing religion and embracing God in my life is what brings true happiness.
Well, what needs to be done then to turn Gen Z around on faith, family, and moral values? What do you think?
I think we need to go back to embracing traditional values in our society. Traditional and religious values once made our country strong, and the left and the Democratic Party is doing everything in their power, it seems, to erase these values from our society.
And I can't let you go without asking about anti-Semitism on campus. I know Jewish students at UCLA are suing the university for not taking a tougher stance against anti-Semitic protests, but the University of Florida did take a tough stance against the anti-Israel protesters. So what's the mood and climate on campus like now at Gainesville?
Florida is a law and order state, and I was very excited to see my university uphold these values and arrest the protesters on our campus. Protesters took over our campus during finals week. They were causing massive distractions, massive disruptions. The university issued warnings, and then when protesters did not follow these warnings, the university took action and arrested these protesters. I believe my university made the right move in protecting the students, protecting the faculty, and protecting our campus community. And I hope to see other schools continue to act in a similar way as to how my university did. I think universities need to be prioritizing the health and safety of campus communities, and the way to do that is to handle these protesters by arresting them.
Okay, education and protecting their safety, that's number one. Emily Sturge, campus reform correspondent at the University of Florida. Thank you for setting us straight today. We appreciate it, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me.
More than 100 healthcare professionals have signed a declaration calling for an immediate end to Medical Association affirmation of harmful puberty blockers and surgeries for children. The American College of Pediatricians, along with Doctors Protecting Children, contend scientific evidence proves gender-altering procedures harm healthy bodies. Folks, this is what most of us have known all along. Why has it taken so long for healthcare professionals to issue a declaration stating the obvious? Just because a prepubescent boy feels like he may be a girl and a prepubescent girl feels like she may be a boy doesn't mean their parents should take them to a doctor to change their gender with hormone therapy or surgery. These are life-altering decisions, not only physical ones, but mental and emotional ones as well. I always believed that children undergoing these procedures were mentally ill. But now I think it's the parents who need psychiatric care for doing this to their children. Also, some doctors jumped too quickly at the chance to play Dr. Frankenstein, molding a child into a freakish monster. Chest surgery alone can cost up to $10,000, and the bill for a full gender transitioning surgery and hormone treatment can reach upwards of $60,000. Yes, like the abortion industry, a lot of money can be made by those in the gender transition industry. Folks, we need to allow children to be children. Kids go through phases as they grow up. That is natural. These decisions should be left to them once they become mature adults. And let's not forget who gave us this life. In His image He made us. Male and female He created us. Our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. God has crafted us to be exactly the way He wants us, to be used in this life to serve His purposes. And in that is true peace, abundance, joy, and blessing. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on the CBN News and NRB channels, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, and Rumble. And until next time, be blessed.